it's Emily from the Pure Desire Asia team, and in this video we're going to talk about boundaries because a lot of the times when we talk about healing, we talk about it in the context of relationship, and if you want to have healthy relationships, then you have to have healthy boundaries. And so boundaries basically are based on our values, so there's something that we're in control of, something that we create, and it's our own personal responsibility. There are actually 3 different types of boundaries that we can model within our relationships. The first one being porous boundaries. So they might look a little bit like this. Because with porous boundaries, it lets almost anyone kind of get in to that space. It's not very guarded or overly trusting of others, even strangers, and maybe oversharing personal information, having difficulty saying no, overly involved in others' problems, quick to adopt others' opinions, avoids conflict, or doesn't assert personal values, or communicates kind of passively. These are not saying that these are negative traits, but oftentimes when our boundaries are a bit too flexible, overly dependent on what other people are thinking, what other people are feeling, then we find ourselves at kind of a loss of how to take care of ourselves. Or we kind of lose sight of, oh, what do I really value? And am I living my lifestyle in a way that actually aligns with that? On the flip side, if our boundaries are just like this, very rigid, there's no space to kind of go in and out of here, right? Rigid boundaries keeps most people at a distance. So if we have very inflexible boundaries, oftentimes we might be untrusting of others, very guarded with personal information, kind of not wanting to be vulnerable, or maybe it feels very, very uncomfortable. We might say no to others most of the time, have difficulty saying yes to things, wanting to commit to things, detach from others' problems, tend to ignore others' opinions or avoid conflict by pushing others away, inflexible personal values, or might communicate a bit aggressively. Now, to kind of find that healthy balance in between, we want to be able to establish healthy boundaries for ourselves. So we don't find ourselves going from, okay, I kind of just ebb and flow with whatever everyone else wants and thinks and believes, versus like, I'm so rigid that I don't have any space for anyone else in my life, or in my, even in my own internal world of how I feel, how I think, there's only space for myself. We want to establish healthy boundaries, which is kind of like this. There's a little bit of space for things to go out and a little bit of space for things to come in. It's, both flexible and inflexible in the places that we feel are most important to us. Say you're ordering dinner and you don't really care too much about what you eat tonight, but your husband really does, and so you're like, oh yeah, whatever, order Pizza Hut. But it's kind of that ability to, okay, I can kind of meet the need of what other people want, and I can see that need, but at the same time I can also express my own needs, and I can get my own needs met because I take responsibility for what I need. Because I know that even those who love me so much might not always be able to read my mind, might not always be able to tell what's kind of happening under the surface. And so I have that ability to kind of let things in and out, but also with that knowledge that it's my choice and I have control over that. So that's kind of healthy boundaries, what might define healthy boundaries. Selective about whom to let in and keep out, takes time to build trust. So you know that trust is important, but also you give the appropriate time for it. Sharing personal information appropriately, able to say no when needed, or yes when needed or wanted. Supports others without being too involved. Accepts conflict as a normal part of life. Stands by personal values but can adapt. And communicates assertively. Not too aggressive, not too passive, but clear. Just to kind of end our discussion on boundaries today, I brought one of my favorite recent books that talks about this balance between mental health and our spiritual health. Try Softer by Andy Colter. And in it, she makes this statement. She writes, "Certainly the Bible shows us that God absolutely hardwired us for connection. But through Jesus, we see that we were also made to become our own selves, to be interdependent, not completely dependent on or avoidant of each other. And if our caregivers didn't give us the tools to develop our attachments appropriately, we can be hindered from doing what God made us for. The idea of remaining connected and interdependent, but not dependent, is deeply biblical." So in this space, she's really talking about how God created us with this ability to set our own boundaries, knowing that we have to depend on Him, but at the same time, we have to take that personal responsibility for our choices and what we choose to do with our actions, with our thoughts, with our emotions. And so, yeah, kind of striking that balance between, okay, how much am I being vulnerable and relying on God, and how much control am I taking over myself?